You are listening to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda. On this episode, Ryan Greene joins me for a wonderful conversation about the recording process behind the albums Less Talk More Rock and Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes. Ryan produced, engineered, and mixed the records, and we had a blast discussing it all. The story behind both of those records is complicated to say the least, as you can tell from the liner notes of Empires and the Where Quantity is Job Number One compilation. For example, in Where Quantity is Job Number One, Chris writes, "We were going to record Less Talk More Rock, but only had 4 songs written, thinking we would just finish the rest in the studio. We got straight to work and managed to finish a grand total of 4 before Mike sent us home. We get into that in this interview." Then, in the Today's Empires liner notes, the band writes, "God tried to stop us from putting this record out. He broke legs, severed fingers, pinched nerves, stole voices, flooded basements, sabotaged frame rates, stampeded moose, and unleashed plagues of naysayers and grown-ups to try to hold us back. And though we walked through the valley of the shadow of posers, we fought our way out the other side, rocking harder and faster than ever." Ryan Greene was there for everything, so let's get into it. Welcome Ryan Greene to the podcast. Enjoy our conversation on Let's Talk More Rock and Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes. Ryan Greene, welcome to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Ryan, I'm so glad you're here. This has been just such a wonderful process of kind of getting to know you a little bit and planning to do this podcast interview with you. I am so excited that we're finally able to do this. Like I was telling you off air, you're joining sort of a production series that I've done on the podcast for the last few years. I took to JP Peters, who did Failed States and Victory Lap. I took to Jason Livermore, who worked on supporting cast and did some mixing and mastering work. So it is an awesome thrill and honor to add you to the production little, ingrained mini series that I've done on the podcast for the last 3 years. It's great to have you here.
Well, nice to be here. Look forward to this.
So Ryan, anybody who is familiar with propaganda is likely familiar with tons of your work, but I thought just to get things moving here, your bio and resume are easily searchable for everybody who is interested in this show. But I'm curious what you're working on, recently that maybe some listeners to this podcast may not know about. Like, what are you excited about in music these days in your career the last couple of years?
Actually, I've just been, over the last few years, looking for bands that, the newer bands. And there's, right now, there are a few bands that I am working with. I'm going to hold their names until another time.
Yeah.
But, I'm just looking for things that are diverse, not something that I would normally do or what people would normally know me for. I ended up, I started my career in the R&B world, but everybody ended up knowing me for the punk rock world. But in and around that, as you know, that I went from the rock, thrash metal, Guitar Hero 3 through 7. I've, R&B, hip hop. I have a pretty diverse resume that I feel really comfortable in all genres.
Yeah, I mean, Patti LaBelle.
I ended up landing in the punk rock world, which I'm thankful for.
Yeah, well, then Countdown to Extinction, you worked on that a lot with Megadeth, which I love that record. But also your work with like Patti LaBelle and like Gladys Knight, like that's really just such a thrill. I mean, do you just like look back on your career and just kind of like laugh at like the amazing beauty of it all?
Yeah, it was interesting because up until my mom passed in 2009, so right before she passed, she said, "You know what? You never look at the past. You only look at what you're working on currently, and not even really forward. It's just when I'm in that pocket, and I like staying in that pocket." And she said, "You should really take a look back on everything that you've been a part of." And when I started to do that, it was a little mind blowing for me, to be honest with you. It's something that a lot of things that I had forgotten about and remember situations and people. And I couldn't be any prouder. My When I set out to become a recording engineer, I had a goal of where what I wanted to achieve in my career. Thanks to every artist I've worked with, has far exceeded that.
Amazing. Where in the world are you working these days?
So uh, I live in Toluca Lake, California. Uh, about 2 years ago, I shut down my studio in North Hollywood and moved it out to Thousand Oaks, where I built a mix room.
Mm,
And I pretty much pulled everything, all the music back quite a bit because it took a little bit longer for me to put the room together. Also, it was the first time in my career that I had the opportunity to uh, take a moment, take a breath. During that time and over the last 6 years, I started to work for Nickelodeon
mm,
and record the voiceover actors for a lot of the shows that they have.
that's so cool.
And that has opened up a whole other path because you start meeting the composers, and some of the composers that you work with. A friend of mine, Doug Rockwell, uh, he walked in one day and we were talking, and I said, "Oh man," he goes, "your stuff kind of sounds a little punk rocky," and he goes,
Mm.
"Oh, I grew up on all that, like No Effects, Lagwagon," and then he looked at me and he goes, "Wait, are you Ryan Greene that?" Yeah, I am. And we just a lot of people, a lot of composers, and I really click because I have of the past, and it makes then the present just even more exciting. And
That is so cool. Do you do audiobook production and stuff like that as well?
no, only the recording the voice actors. They have, and you're working with the best voice actors in the world. Anybody that does the job knows the level of detail that there is. People that have never done it and just think, oh, you put a mic in front of somebody and that's it.
Hmm.
That's definitely not the case. And you're working with the best of the best. And you're listening to people read you stories and the different inflections, which is no different than vocal melodies, right? Somebody wants a different read on something. It's a different cadence. It's a different melody, and they dive into that, and it's really nice to sit back and watch other people being directed and the things that they
Fantastic.
create. So I feel like right now in my life, I have the best of both worlds. I still am mixing, and I'm looking for more mix projects than production projects, just because of the time schedule. And I love my new room. I love spending time in there and creating.
Amazing. Well, Ryan, that's awesome. Thank you for the update for the listeners out there, because I know so many people out there who listen to this podcast grew up on the records that you worked on for so many years. So we'll chat about some. We're going to chat about Propagandy. Is your credits with Propagandy involve the engineering of Less Talk, More Rock and Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes. I kind of want to go through both of those records, especially the crazy story around Less Talk, More Rock, as I understand it. But I want to know a little bit about what you remember about being exposed to Propagandy for the first time and then being brought on board as far as working with them in a recording environment.
Well, my role with them was produce, engineer, and mix on all the records.
Hmm.
So my first experience was, Fat Mike gives me a call and said, you know, we want to do a 12-day record with this band, and we booked time. I lived in LA at the time, so I got in my car with my amps and a couple snare drums and little necessities, and drove to San Francisco to a studio called Razor's Edge. And just to give everybody, and I've talked about this before, Razor's Edge was not really a studio. And really, what is a studio? You put the gear in, and all of a sudden you can now justify it's a studio. Well, it was one of those studios that was quite interesting. Imagine a one-car garage that
Hmm.
is 10 feet by, maybe 14 feet long, and then another little L section that jotted off that was another 6 feet. Ceilings were maybe, they barely made 8 feet, maybe. And the whole room was drywall.
Hmm.
And it had this old, disgusting carpet that was super thin. It was enough to cover the floor and call it carpeting. So the room itself had no tone. It had no nothing.
Hmm.
It's you had to work for everything that you got. The thing about the studio was it was inexpensive, and you're able to do a record, and it had a Trident TSM console, which was nice. I'm used to the A range, but it's almost the exact same configuration as that type of console. And an Atari tape machine, which was great. I had one of those at EMI, so I was very familiar with that. And I show up with microphones in hand and walk into the studio and sitting there talking with Tim, the assistant at the time. And the band walks in, and you meet everyone, and uh, this was the first time that we've ever talked. So
Hmm.
they're saying, we're going to set up, and now we're going to work on a record together. So there were no demos. There were no. I had no idea what I was walking into. All I knew was I was going to sit down, and we're going to be working together and create a record. So uh, the band loads all of their equipment in, because you have to load all the equipment in and then shut the doors, because the drummer is setting up right in front of the door that you're loading in. So again, you're talking about it was tiny and toneless. So we start setting up the drums. While George is setting up the drums, I'm in the control room aligning the tape machine, and the assistant is out there running uh, microphone cables. And I walk out to the room, and I open up my microphone collection and start putting the mics on the kit. And I'm looking at George's kit, going, well, your drum heads are like beat to crap. I go, when was the last time you replaced your drum heads? And he goes, oh, I don't know. It's been years. Well, we're doing a record here, so. And I'm again, I'm coming from a place. I was chief engineer for EMI at the time, and I'm used to people bringing in drum kits that are meticulous. They're set up to record. Heads are all on. They're pretty much tuned. You might even have somebody that's bringing in, somebody to work on the drums. They just get the tuning set up for you, uh, before you start the record. So, uh, so I said, okay, well, we're going to need to get new heads. So there's good, Guitar Center's probably 4 miles away. We send somebody out to go get drum heads. During that time, George starts taking off uh, his heads, and it wasn't just the top head. The bottom head was just as important. So completely redoing the drum kit. Now we only have a certain amount of time to do these records.
Yeah.
Definitely don't have time to spend another 2 hours tearing apart a drum kit and then putting the heads on, retuning it, kind of getting it in a place, and that for me is record ready. So George steps out with the assistant. They go get drum heads. They come back. Uh, I'm cleaning up the drum head, the edges of the toms. It's the first time that they've seen light pretty much since the drums were bought. So I'm cleaning them up, and you're talking like an inch of dust, like
Yeah.
just like it's just from all the clubs and all the dirt and the grime. So I'm cleaning all those up. He comes back with the heads. We put the heads on, tune them up. Now it's probably 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We started at 11, and now we're ready to at least get microphones on the drums. listened to a snare drum, didn't care for the snare drum. I put one of mine on, and when he started to play, it was one of those things that was magical. It just worked. So uh, we get the drums set up. We get Chris set up to play guitar along with Jord just as a scratch. But there's a little room off to the side of the control room that is almost like a hallway to get out to the tracking room.
Hmm.
And we put Chris's amp in there and turned down really low, otherwise it would blast us in the control room. Didn't want to hear that. So we baffled that up, and then we plugged in. I think it was I think John's bass was playing bass that just ran a DI for John. And this is all scratch. I'm used to doing records where, especially records like this, I need to hear everything, but I'm going to really focus on the drums, make sure that we have a solid foundation before we build.
Hmm.
And again, not knowing the band if they could play together or not, I just didn't want to take that chance. So we start. Uh, I asked them to run the first song down from top to bottom, and Chris goes, "Well, some of these songs, just so you know, I'm still writing the lyrics, and sometimes lyrics take time for me to write." I was like, "Well, we have 10 days before we need to have everything done. I'm sure that you'll be able to you know, write lyrics to your song, the rest of the songs." And I guess there were, I don't know, 5 or 6 of them that still needed to be finished. So we go through and we get a drum sound, and the drums sound really good.
Yeah.
It's actually surprising with the way that the room was and the tuning, the way George hit the drums, like everything came together, and it was great. I could just push up faders after I did all the EQ and everything, and didn't feel like I had. It's like, well, I'll fix that later, or I'll do this or do that. It just sat perfectly. Plugged in John's bass, uh, got an amp sound, and that was magical. It was like, oh my, I'm getting goosebumps, by the way, as I'm telling you the story. It was like, it could not have gone any better. There
Yeah.
was no way that it could have gone any better. And then it came time for Chris to play. And I've never heard Chris play guitar, and he's dialing in his amp, and he's very, very meticulous. But on top of being an absolute phenomenal player, he knows his amp, and he was dialing that in. I'm like, oh my God, thank God for this. Somebody who really, who has a sound, who knows what he wants, and he dialed it in, put 3 mics on the cabinet, brought up the mics, kind of tweaked them a little bit. We talked about the gain of the amp and a couple little things, just minor adjustments, for the recording process. And we're off to the races, and we're knocking out drum parts, and they weren't used to everybody. I think at that time, a lot of people were used to just playing songs down from top to bottom. But if I hear a mistake and you're not using a click track, it's going to be hard to punch in and out of record.
Mm-hmm.
My thing was is that if I hear something going to stop, we're going to roll back, and then we're just going to punch in. They're like, well, what do you mean? We'll get a click at the very beginning of the song to give you the tempo, and then you're just going to do what you do, keep the energy. And we'd get to a verse or a chorus, and George would do a drum fill and be like, no, you know what, let's stop. We're going to roll back and then try playing this type of fill. And then now everybody, as soon as you hear the music, start playing along, and then I'm going to put you back into record. And that's how we kind of built that record. And that's how I built all the records, really, is when anytime that we would not use a click track, had to uh, either punch in and out and hope that you don't they play it at the exact same time, or you just stop or you just do it on a fresh piece of tape and then you cut that piece in. I've done that as well. So anyhow, we end up building this record. Everything is going great. We're just knocking this record out. And every day that I came in, and we ended up doing the drums in a couple days for the whole record. I mean, that was kind of the pace. It's 2 days to do drums, a day to do bass, 3, 4 days to do guitars, do some vocals, maybe three days to mix, 4 days if they have a bigger budget, and we're done. And we go to the first song, and Chris has his lyrics, and we knock that song out. Then we go to the next one, and we get up to the point where Chris didn't finish his lyrics. Like, well, take tonight, work on the lyrics of this song, and tomorrow when I get in, we'll finish the song. And that came in that next day, and he didn't finish the lyrics because every word has such meaning to Chris, which is wonderful. Everything that he writes, uh, it, it is everything to him. So we ended up getting to the point where, well, I can mix half the record, and then it looks like we'll have to come back and mix the second half. And then I talked to Mike about it, and I said, well, I prefer to mix the whole record at once. That way you have consistency through it. So Mike agreed, and uh, we sent the band home. And they really wanted to finish, but it was just not going to happen. So about a month later, I call Mike and I was like, hey, have you heard from the band? He goes, no, have you? I said, no. And another month later, like, hey, have you heard from the band? He goes, yeah. He goes, so I have some bad news. And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And I figured that they just wanted to take the tapes and finish it up in Canada. He goes, so there was a couple songs that Chris rewrote the lyrics to, but now the arrangement changed a little bit. Now they want to record a couple of the songs again. Like, oh man! And I'm thinking to myself, every part of that first recording, you just bring up the faders on everything, and it was literally one of those records that 90% of the mix was already built in. It just worked. I played it for a friend of mine that when I left LA to go do the record, he was working on guitars for a 12-song record. It was a big rock record. When I came back, I had done 2 records by the time that my friend had finished that one record just doing guitars. He spent the month doing guitars on this record, and I had done 2 records in that time. And he heard this record and he's like, how the hell did you do that? And I go, I don't know. The studio was shitty. It's like the room was like horrible note tone. But the player, George is a really unorthodox player. Just what he does is it's so unique.
Yeah, he doesn't sound like anybody.
He doesn't exactly. He does though. He sounds like him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, and I love that. Just absolutely love that. And I said it just all worked. So I said, okay, when are we going to do it? And he goes, well, I'll probably do it in a month. Well, speed up the story. A month later, we find out that we're retracking the whole record. So that perfect, everything just worked sound wise. But I was confident that we would go back in. It'll be the same drum set. I'll bring the same snare, same miking, same room, same everything. It'll be great. And it was pulling teeth to get a kick drum sound and a snare sound. Nothing sounded the same. Everything sounded different. And it was fighting the everything was a fight to get everything to really lock in together. So the re-record of the record to me was so different, and it still came out good.
Yeah, it did.
but that first one was something else.
Man, well, I know that you finished some of the songs because they're versions of like Firestorm My Ass, which then became Nailing Descartes to the Wall, and then the original version of Resisting Tyrannical Government. Some of those came out on their G7 Records compilation in like 1998. So those versions, some of those versions are available to listeners out there, which is really cool to listen to the differences because they do sound a lot different.
Well, one was not mixed, one was mixed.
Mm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that and I didn't recall that they had even released those. So that's a surprise to me because all those were just faders up and just rolling down a rough mix.
Oh, interesting. Well, you know, something that really comes up a lot on this podcast over the last couple of years is the bass sound on what became Less Talk More Rock. I would love your comment on the bass sound. To me, it has a very reminiscent tone of what also came out on No Effects' So Long and Thanks for All the Shoes. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that bass tone, because everybody out there will be yelling at me to ask you that if I forget to ask about the bass tone.
Well, I think that the bass tone in general, and I feel this way about everything, that a lot of it just starts with the player. You could have the best amp and the best bass and everything, but it is truly how the player owns that instrument. And I feel that I think that the way that John played and the bass that he used is really what dictated that tone. I mean, you could run it through an amp, you could run it through the distortion, and if we would have done if Fat Mike would have come in and played the same bass, it would have sounded completely different.
Hmm.
So, and again, we didn't have, when I was getting sounds, and this goes for every record that I did on Fat Records, and you don't have a lot of time to guess. If you don't have that tone up and you're moving, you're gonna run out of time. So
Yeah.
you have to shoot for it's a feeling. You have to go, okay, what is this doing to me? How's this feel? What is it emotionally doing for me? Is it pushing and pulling in all the right places? And that's just tone wise. And if the bass player is in tune with that, when John was at the time in tune with that, that's I think that's where that bass tone came about. It was
Hmm.
just going, okay, let's try this. How does this work? This, and you're going through different tones really, really quick, and then all of a sudden they go, oh, I like this. Great. Okay, let's dial this in. Great. Here we go.
Nice. I like that it's like very distinct. You can hear it so clearly throughout the entire record. Bass is one of those instruments where it often struggles to come through clearly to the listener. So I love the fact about like this record and like So Long and Thanks for All the Shoes, like I mentioned, that the bass is clearly audible for the entire record, and you can always pick it out.
Yeah, and you know, there's a whole thing about bass in general, and especially nowadays too with records that everybody wants big bass. With big, round, huge bass, you're not going to get the clarity. You're not going to be able to get it up in the mix. So, people figured out other ways to do that, which is, maybe run a keyboard bass underneath it. So you're hearing the bass, but you're getting all that bottom end from another instrument.
You know, yeah, I know that the second time around for recording the record was like you said, pulling teeth. But like, what's a couple of good memories that stand out to you from that second time around?
Well, the pulling teeth was really more just going, well, this is what we had, and now this is and this is what it is. The overall making of that record was freaking amazing because now
Hmm.
guys, right? I mean, they introduced me to tofu.
Nice.
Well, Chris was out there making dinner one night, and you just kind of get to know the players in the band, and they become your friends. And the overall making of it was fast. It was furious, and they're all such good players. and the respect that they had for each person that was doing what they do. It was, it's a band that looking back, that the overall experience was all positive.
Mm.
We butted heads once. It was just, it just kind of was.
A random question that springs to mind is about the interlude track, about Shell, a public disservice announcement, and the narration of the person who performs the narration, I believe, is Ramsey Kanan from AK Press and PM Press. I'm wondering if you remember anything about tracking that narration on that interlude track about Shell.
Funny thing is, I don't have a. That's one thing I don't remember. I have no idea. All I know is uh, that somehow it just appeared.
Amazing, because I think he's a Scottish publisher for AK Press. But yeah, he's got that little narration about public disservice announcement with the doot 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 doot
Oh
doot
yeah,
doot doot.
yeah, you know,
Amazing.
yeah. But I don't even remember him coming in at this point. But then again, that was how many decades ago?
Yeah, I mean, probably 27 years ago now at this point. I'm trying to track him down. So Ramsey Kanan, I'm trying to find you. Um, do you have any favorite? Do you have a particular favorite song from the record?
Oh, there are that record to me from top to bottom is so good. It was so good that I remember when we finished it, that if I take sound away and I just listen to the record and the songs and uh, the writing, that I listened to it from the time that we finished when I drove back to LA for that almost 6 hour drive was on repeat.
Hmm.
And then anytime that I got into my car, I listened to it from top to bottom on repeat.
Yeah.
For me, it's one of those records. And there was another record. Pulley's third record was that way for me as well.
Yeah.
There are certain records that how I think it was just how it was all put together. Could have been the sequencing, could have been just the songs and where I was at that time in my life.
Well, question about the sequencing as well. Chris has published pictures on his Patreon of like original versions where the sequencing and the track listing was different than what eventually came out on the record. Do you remember anything about the sequencing process for this one?
No, by the time that we had finished, most of the time with Fat, that we would have anywhere from 8 to 14 days to do a full record, including mix. So they would have mastering booked that next day,
Hmm.
and then I would be on to another record.
Wow.
I would be coming back to LA to my chief engineer job at EMI. So when it came to the sequencing part of that, I feel that Chris and Fat Mike uh, were diving into that. Mike always had an opinion. He was very involved in the sequencing and being a part of that process.
Did Mike come to the studio at all and like for any of the first session or the second session?
Oh yeah, I mean, there were during that time, there were a lot of people would like just pop by and say hi to the band and just be in it and whatnot. I feel that that record, from what I remember, Mike kind of stayed away from uh, adding adding anything to the record. The band knew exactly the band knew exactly who they were at that time, which is why throughout the process, you started to see the growth.
Hmm.
And we'll probably get into something a little bit later in this interview about that growth.
For sure. Um, so I know that the song, like I know we're going to talk about this record in a second, but Back to the Motor League, there's a version from the mid 90s where Back to the Motor League was originally supposed to be written around the Less Talk More Rock era. Did you ever hear Back to the Motor League's earlier versions in the mid 90s that wound up becoming the major standout track on the next record?
No, I did not, and that was the thing that you would roll into these records and you wouldn't even have demos. The only people that you'd hear demos from would be like Tony Sly would send over a cassette.
Sure. Yeah, like an
Hey,
acoustic strumming kind of thing.
yeah, so Tony sometimes would work up a full demo. I mean, he would have his a drum machine, and he would have all of his parts worked out and be able to present that to the band and go, "Hey, here's our song."
Amazing.
Very,
Well, so Let's Talk More Rock last year celebrated its 25th anniversary. What are your thoughts on the legacy of the record, just as like a whole, and what the impact that it had on the punk scene and the music world in the years after its release?
uh, I feel that the band itself, they were already so unique when they came in for the Let's Talk More Rock record, and uh, throughout throughout that existence of that record, the uh, I still get emails from people saying that that record has inspired them and and opened their eyes to something that they never thought was possible.
Hmm.
Right. So, for me to look back on that and go, oh, well, I was a part of that. I remember, I was there from the conception of that and kind of watching your baby grow. It is an absolute proud moment. I was just talking to somebody the other day about this record, and uh, that it was something again that I'll never forget in my life. It had an impact on me, and I came from a completely different world.
Mm, that's amazing. I mean, did you and the band connect too about your like work and like metal and stuff like that as well? Because that they were little metalheads from a young age. And did you connect at all about that, like talk about Megadeth and stuff like that too?
Oh yeah, we had all kinds of conversations. I mean, my one of my dream bands. If I was going to put a dream band together with all the different players out there, that Chris would be my guitar player.
Amazing. I
Yeah,
love that.
and I feel like his uniqueness and his voicing is that he does on the guitar and energy is like no other. So I love the fact that where they started and where they are at now is such a just a wonderful growth in musicianship and energy.
Amazing. Well, I mean, obviously, I couldn't agree more. I've spent the last 3 years of my life obsessively making a podcast about the band's music. Um, well, let's jump forward 5 years. Uh, Tell me about the beginning of getting you involved with today's empires and like what that process looked like for setting up that experience for you and the band, and just kind of take me through like coming on board um, for that process for the next record. And because it's a big shift for the band sound wise, they have a lineup change. A lot of time has passed since the last record. So set the stage for us. Bring us into the story for today's Empires.
So for today's empires, again, Mike calls me and said, "Band wants to work with you again," and we did the same thing. We showed up, but this time it was at a different studio. So Mike and I had bought a studio uh, that was pretty. It was pretty new by the time that the band rolled in. So of course they come in. George brought his drum set. During that time, we had the drums worked on, the edges redone. So we're super excited about getting him set up. Chris said that he's been really working on his guitar sound, that he came up with something that's really unique and that he absolutely loves. And then I was introduced to Todd, and Todd was just awesome. He was just, he was uh, friendly forward. He was just, just a really, really nice guy.
Yes.
I'm thinking, well, uh, I'm thinking that they're going to kind of pick it up where they left off with less talk, but Todd brought in more of a hardcore sound,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember getting everything set up, to record with the record, and Todd was very specific on his bass tone. It's like, and like, this is great because this was different than what John was. You know, John has had his bass, and he's there to play, but he knows what sounds good to him. Todd was very, very specific, and with that, I think that foundationally, that that kind of started to turn the record into something else. But when we were doing the record, they all they said was, "Yeah, we're just we're going to be a harder sounding band,"
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know what that meant, because who knows? What does that actually mean? So we lay down the drums, we lay down the bass, and um, we start laying down the guitar, and then Chris brings in his normal setup, which he knows really well, and he plugs in, and the guitars are ultra distorted. Right? You could barely, with one guitar, you could hear the movement between his chords because he's such a clear player. And I mentioned to him that if we double this guitar, that it's going to end up, it's going to wash out the whole sound.
Mm.
Really love the guitar sound. And I said, well, how about we bring the gain back just a little bit? We bring back the gain a little bit, and it doesn't change. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know what's going on. And I said, we're bringing the gain back on the amp, and it's not changing at all. And he goes, oh, my guitar, it has it, instead of one active pickup that takes one battery, this one actually took two batteries, so it had a lot of output. But he worked on his sound. He was very, very adamant about this was going to be the guitar sound. I was like, okay, but I'm letting you know that when we get to mix, it's going to start washing everything out. And he goes, okay, but I really like it. It's like, great. So we start doing we lay down all the guitars, and Chris just bangs it all out. I mean, he's fast,
Mm.
so fast. Get all the guitars done. We start doing vocals, and they're singing really aggressive. And about halfway through the record, Todd and Chris lose their voice.
Mm. I was wondering if that, I think it says that in the liner notes actually as well. I'm gonna have a peek here. So then what happened whenever
So they
yeah.
so they lost their voice. At that point, you really can't do anything. You could either start mixing the record, kind of like what we did with Less Talk, or you send the band home.
Mm.
So we sent the band home, and uh, took them a few months to heal the voice. Came back out, finished the record, mixed the record. Was having a really difficult time mixing the record because the guitars were really ultra distorted, and to be able to get guitars up in the mix, they have to be loud, but that also washes out everything else. So it was trying to figure out how to put it all together. I put it all together. Uh, we sent it to mastering. Record gets mastered. I get a call from Chris about a week later. He goes, I don't know what to do. And that was one of his first his first statements on the phone. And I said, do about what? He goes, you're totally right. The guitar tone washes out the whole record.
Hmm.
And he goes, what do we do? And I said, you get on a plane, you come back out, and we'll spend 2 days and re-record all the songs and just re-record the rhythms. And I'll recall the mixes, but once we recall the mixes, the mix part of it will change, but we'll do it all in 2 days. So Chris came out, uh, he re-recorded all the guitars, and again, one thing changes everything. His good, newer guitar tone changed the mix, but there was no budget to really uh, kind of start from scratch. So I kind of had to just put the newer guitars in and make adjustments as quickly as possible because there was no financial backing for it. We were already at that point over. I didn't charge them to on my time, but there was still just the studio time itself,
Yeah.
flights, and now you have to get the record completely remastered. That's another expense. So uh, that part of it was costly, and I only had a couple days because I had another band right behind after them, and then another, then another, then another, and one thing would have created a domino effect. So we just put the newer guitars in and mix it the best that I could and sent it out the door.
Wow, that is very stressful. Was that 2 day like careening through those guitars a second time with Chris? Was that pretty stressful experience for the two of you?
Uh, well, definitely there was an urgency to get it done, but the to get it done, I can't remember how many songs were on the record. You could probably tell me
14.
14. So we had 14 songs to do rhythm guitars on and adjust the mix in 2 days.
That's wild. That's hard work right there too.
Yeah.
Um, what do you remember like the something I'm curious about too is the way that the vocal performances were so drastically different. You mentioned that already. Like they're singing a lot more aggressively. Todd comes in and the vocals for Todd on that record are his most like intense, some of his most intense like vocal performances from Todd ever on that record because he was kind of singing out of his range as well. Like,
Right.
what stands out to you about like trying to get these takes right for these like really aggressive performances vocally on your end?
Well, I think that's where you know their their voices started to go out is because we were trying to be as meticulous as we can. And as you mentioned, Todd was singing at the top of his range. Chris was singing really aggressive as well. So they're they don't have a B game. So when they're in front of that mic, it is everything they got. And then it's like, yeah, you're a little flat on that.
Mhm.
You're a little this, so let's get this again, and then they do it again. And by the time you get finish a song, well, you probably could have sang four songs in the over that time period, and it was really really taxing on them.
Yeah.
But
Was
but the thing is that also I feel kind of set up to where that next record went.
yeah.
Learned a lot. I think that this was the that pinnacle change for them. That then they learned a lot, and then they kind of figured out what needed to be done.
Did Jord kind of blow your mind with his performance on Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes? Because like to me, when this record came out, I illegally downloaded tracks one at a time off Napster when I was like in high school. And like I got Bullshit Politicians as the first thing I ever heard off this record. Like blew my mind. And then I got Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes. Then I got Albright Monument Baghdad. Then I got back to the Motor League, and like one by one, like tracks were leaking from this record back in the day, and it was like this constantly mind blowing experience for me, where I would just get all my friends to come over, and we would just listen to Albright Monument Baghdad like 15 times in a row. I mean, this was an insane, insane shift for me, and this is the moment where I was like 100% all in on this band. Is this record?
That is hilarious. Well, when George was playing his parts, and it was a you watch him play, and for me, it's uncomfortable watching him play because it is just it's like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
And, so you're watching him play these parts, and it's and they're again they're very unique to George, and
Hmm.
again it created a foundation of controlled chaos.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, and you're no like you're no slouch to speed at this point in your career as well, like the other bands that you've worked with. And to me, this record, the drumming is just like something different that scene wasn't really doing at this time. Like there was fast songs, of course, but like this is a different kind of drum performance to me.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because you could at some point I feel that George really was a trendsetter because you could only do the fast beats so much before uh, it's like, yeah, well, I've heard that beat. It's everything in and around that. I even had a band uh, come in that I had done a record with previously that they said, I'm doing the same fast beat I did on the last record. Can you just use that? Yeah, right. Well, George figured out a way to approach the project that was completely different, which again it makes the band in general so unique. And I
Yeah.
think that uniqueness really does need to be recognized throughout with everyone because everybody in that band is really a unique individual, and how they come together as a unit is something special as well. There's nobody that's like left on the outside, like, oh shit, I'm just really tired of this person, but I'm going to do this record, and it's none of that. It is them. They're all for one.
And that resonates too with what JP Peters said whenever I interviewed him about Victory Lap and Failed States. Is he's like, Jord does not recycle fills. So you can have a beat that Jord does that is kind of reminiscent of what other people in this genre of music do, but the fills are like not recycled, they're not rehashed. He doesn't reuse things. They speak to the individual song that they're a part of, which kind of makes for another little, interesting approach as well.
Right. Yeah, and that is 100% true. He is a unique individual, and also meticulous. That's how
Hmm.
I feel that's why he doesn't recycle anything. He
Yeah.
is he is a trendsetter. But I
Did
also that's also not just George. That is also the band in general.
did Todd do pretty well on his bass performance in the studio? Todd's talked a little bit here about his some like studio performance anxiety, and Todd was a brand new bassist whenever he did Today's Empires. He had only been playing bass for a couple of years. What do you remember about the briefly about like Todd's bass performance in the studio?
Well, I don't remember it being anything but good. I mean, it's like with everything, every record. Somebody is playing, and you stop, roll back, and go, "Hey, we mishit on this note, or we have to, fell out of the pocket on this," and you roll back and you punch it in, and oh, you know what? I feel like you could do that fill better, and they go back and we just punch in just the fill and things like that. And I feel that that kind of confidence where they that helps build the confidence because they don't have to play the whole thing from top to bottom. So I feel that 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 environment really helped Todd in getting over any kind of anxiety that he may have had. But he didn't feel like, and I'm pretty good at picking that up. It didn't feel like he was worried about it. I think he just knew that he knew where he was at as a player.
Mm.
This is who I am. This is what I do.
Ooh, something else that comes to mind. I know that whenever they did "Fuck the Border," they were performing the vocals differently, where they were saying it really quickly, and then I think that Chris credited you as having the idea of singing the chorus like halftime instead of the really fast original version that Todd was doing with "I Spy." Do you remember anything about that at all?
No, but I'll take it.
Sweet, nice, I love it.
I feel just in general with all the records that I've done that I have a big mouth. There's no doubt about it. I will throw all kinds of stuff out because I'm always trying to push everybody to maybe think outside the box of where they're at and maybe where they can go. Maybe that idea will help spawn something else, and even if it's not now, maybe it's for the next record that they do. So uh, it it would not be surprising if I said something and it was
What
something completely opposite of what they were doing.
any thoughts about like this record as a whole, like, or favorite songs or like impact that you've seen it make over the years that kind of linger with you about like kind of what it all means?
Yeah, you get into favorite songs, and I'm gonna have the same response because uh, I I think with everything that I do, I don't have there may be songs that make me feel a certain way, but that's how I react. That's how I react to music in general. What is it doing for me emotionally? And I say this a lot. Make me want to drive fast, drive slow. Think of a sunset. Think of jumping out of a plane. I think music in general just needs to create a feeling and emotion. And I think
Mm,
that's what It's not just okay. Here's a guitar sound. That's why I really appreciate Chris. Where he didn't walk into the studio and go, okay, I'm going to plug into this amp and just play. He worked on his tone, and it became an extension of who he is as a player.
yeah. I've got one guitar question. So Let's Talk More Rock is a wonderful guitar performance. So many things on that record stand out to me, like Resisting Tyrannical Government is one of my favorite guitar performances ever by Chris. But this record has like blazing solos. And do you remember anything about like the bringing the soloing in as like a such a major feature on tunes like Back to the Motor League and Purina Hall of Fame that was kind of a major shift from the previous record?
Uh, Ask me the question again.
What was the like what are your takeaways on like adding guitar solos for the band, and like what are your memories about like doing the solos for this record?
Well, you know, first thing is Chris had everything worked out in advance. So I came from a world where people did guitar solos. I didn't know the scene well enough that realized that a lot of people didn't,
Mm.
right? So when he did a guitar solo, I was just like, okay, great, you know. And again, very unique on his approach and his voicings and phrasings and what he did. But you know, quickly to jump back to Less Talk, we're going to go back for something that I do remember that during the second making of that record, one of the issues that we had with uh, getting the guitar tone the second time was we were I kept saying it sounds completely different. And Chris is like, it's the same guitar though, and I said, and this is the same amp, and it's the same amp, and it's the same cabinet. We went back and forth for about 5 minutes, and I kept tweaking the amp, trying to figure it out. And Chris was like, and Chris knows that amp forwards and backwards. It was a Mesa Mark IV, uh, and could not figure out why we couldn't get this guitar back. And he finally said, he goes, man, he goes, I don't understand. He goes, this is exactly the same guitar that I used the last time. I mean, I went out and bought the same guitar. And I go, what do you mean you bought the same guitar? And he goes, oh, well, somebody took, I guess they were at a show or something. Somebody stole his guitar that he used for the first recording of Less Talk More Rock.
Wow.
So he went out and bought another guitar that was identical. And I said, there are no two guitars that sound identical, Chris. I said this whole time I'm like chasing my tail, going, I don't understand it. I had a hard enough time with George's drums going, I don't know why it sounds so different. Not saying good or bad, but it just sounds different. And then we go this, we spent a half hour getting a guitar tone, and he finally said, "Oh yeah, well this it's the same. It is the same guitar. I bought the same guitar, and if he didn't use the word bought, I would have never known."
Amazing.
But
Well,
again, with that, you know, his how comfortable he is in the player and tone and how he plays, and he always plays with conviction. That all the soloing, uh, everything that how he plays. If you really are up close and watching him do what he does, it is all done with intent. There's nothing. There's not one string that gets hit by mistake. It is everything is intentional.
yeah. I mean, I think a lot about your job and seeing performances done in the studio that eventually go on to have such an impact. And like in the moment, you have no idea what impact a song is going to make. Maybe none, maybe lots. And I think that it's really cool that you've had the experience of like being able to see these songs and having no idea what impact they would make in the world, and then watching to go on like and watch like your babies go out into the world and make a dent. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the thing I did love about a lot of the records is that there were no references of we want it to sound like this.
Hmm.
Not one band came in and said, I want to sound like this. So really what we were doing was on all the records were uh, we would get up a sound and see if it emotionally and if it did work for the drummer, the bass player, the guitar player, the singer, and then we would go with it. So we were really letting the music guide us to wherever it was going to end up. And then I feel that at some point, people were going, well, I want to sound a little bit more like this, or I want to sound a little bit more like that. And they're starting to use more tone references. But, with Chris and the band just in general, they, at that moment in time before, you know, after that record, when they started to work with other people, they were like, this is what they had brought in, and this is what we were taking and recording and just refining it and making it everything that we could make it for the time that we had to do it and what they were looking for at that time.
Which record did you have more fun making? Less Talk, More Rock, or Today's Empires?
Oh my God, uh, I hate being so generic about it, but they were both fun because there's something about when you work with somebody for the first time and you get to know them, uh, and that type of energy, and then the next time that you work with them, you know them, and now they've become um, better players, writers. They're they're probably more refined in what they do and how they do it, and uh, that band. I cannot imagine that anybody that works with them would be disappointed with what they do and how they do it.
I love that it was like 3.5 sessions to make two records. You know what I mean?
Jesus. And uh, and I could look back on it, and everything could sound, the mixes. I was mixing from 11 in the morning until 3 in the morning every night. My sessions would go from 11 in the morning until 2 or 3 in the morning, and I was rarely walking out of that control room. And that wasn't just for that record; that was for every record. So I could hear on the mixes where uh, what time of day I was, what time it was, and you go through it and go, God, if you would have, I was just able to have one extra day, it would have been 50% better on my end of it. But yeah, I finally came up with the phrase, "It's the best I could do for the time that I had to do it," and that's where I have to die on my vine and go, well, um, this is what it is. And thankfully that um, it it worked for the band at the time, and it worked for the scene, and people loved the record because at the end of the day, the songs, the production didn't get in the way of the songs. I hate when the production takes over the song, and
Amazing.
so
Well, Ryan, I am just absolutely thrilled that we were able to do this and do such a deep dive into both records. Your story is a massive part of what I've been trying to capture on this podcast about this band and the work that they've done over their career. I'm really super grateful to you for diving back in time with me and telling the story of these records from your perspective on the production, engineering, and mix end, because it's just so fun to listen to and reminisce, and it's just fun to capture stories and help other people hear about them on the things that they love. So thank you so much for doing this with me. It means so much.
oh, thank you, and thank you for doing this. I think that having somebody like yourself that a band has been such an important part of their lives, that that you are uh, presenting it in a place of both, you know, where it started and where they are now and where they're going to go, and they should be giving you free tickets and merch to every show that they do.
I love it. Well, Ryan Greene, you've I've loved your record since I was in middle school, man. It is an absolute thrill to hang out and to hear your stories. It just just as a fan of music in general, I love what you've done throughout your career. Your records have made a huge impact on me and all of my friends. And I can't wait to share this episode with all the people that I listened to Less Talk More Rock with in 8th grade. So thank you again. And it just means a ton, man.
Wait, you're in 8th grade when you listened to that record?
Uh, they came out in 96, and in 96, I would have been in 6th grade, and I found them probably in about 90, early 98, I think is when I first heard Propagandy. So you had already done Let's Talk More Rock, and it was out whenever I heard them for the first time.
Oh, I was 12 years old.
Crazy.
Yeah. And thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and also a big pleasure to work in this scene for as many years as I have. All the bands get huge props for having to deal with my shit.